Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 13th. It's not a Friday, so it's okay. Uh, Everything's rosy. The market has made its turnaround, coming off the fade that took place because obviously everything is great. The Fed is going to continue to tighten. Deficits are bigger. Debt is crazy, and Russia's losing. And somehow Europe has solved the energy problem, so is the West, and market is skyrocketing from that. All that being said, plenty of technical reasons why we would be doing what we're doing here. And in this particular case, though, look at our readings. And that magenta MBI, fantastic. 47, that's getting up there. So you can see when we reach these peak levels, how much longer do you have before that momentum starts to fade? Well, that becomes the question of when does that magenta dip back down below that 33 level to create a sell signal? So much further to go. So that gives a lot more room and the potential that you get one of these where it comes up, rolls over a little bit, but stays relatively high with that MBI yellow also over the 33, and it becomes an easy mode to follow it. From a DOC, we see just a little bit of fade of short-term buyers as well as midterm, but uh, captured all of our long-term buyers and shorts relatively weak within that setup. Um, and again, this is just that idea that if the Fed changes its target and isn't going to tighten further, then everything's good. And it does make a dynamic shift. There's two sides to it too, because the Fed accepting a higher inflation target, which I've suggested for years, has been the plan anyway, because there's no way to overcome the deficits that exist other than to inflate your way out of them. You're not going to be able to tax people enough to take care of it. So if you devalue what a trillion, 10 trillion, or 20 trillion really is worth, and that works. From an NQ standpoint, it's been a little bit softer. Readings are the same, should have produced quite a bit more of jolt, but that's okay. Um, Extremes in the yellow range, meaning in a cell, that's where we're going to be looking. It's not a hard target like it is when they're red. Usually, I like to see yellows mixed with red, then you know that you've got a solid precursor. Like back over here, we ended up with the lead off to it being in red, and then we went to yellow extreme histograms right there, and they all ended up filling plus. So that worked out beautifully. From Euro, like I said, sunshine and roses. Ukraine is now winning, which don't believe that if you're really that inclined. Looks like the Russians have decided to concentrate on the Donbass area and focus their winter strategy to just consolidate what they've already taken. And looks like that's where they're going to hold out for a while. But you'll just hear wonderful success for Ukraine. I don't know what they're really getting for it. It was already there, so they're just supposedly reclaiming stuff that theoretically is unpopulated now with all of the evacuations. So, regardless, the euro is skyrocketing up to 101. If you can call that skyrocketing. That's why it's nice looking at that big chart, because like this, you get to see how far that decline is, and it's pretty universal when we look across charts. Gold again is pretty anemic with the white MBI leading. It's starting to fade off a little bit, so maybe that magenta will take over and give it a little more spark. You also have green DOC that should be enough to push it. If it doesn't, then I would expect another leg down. See, that's another secondary item that we get with these. When we get a strong buy like this, you better see some movement out of it, because if you don't, like here, once it flips, you know you're making back to the zero and then new lows as well. So oil creeping back up again. It's not catastrophic yet. You're going to get over that 95 is certainly over 100 a barrel for it to really turn back up the inflation. I think a lot of people have accommodated it. In Italy here, I was at the start of the year. we could see where things were headed. And I was telling a lot of my friends that if they didn't prepare for the price increases and that they would be in trouble. And sure enough, while they reported, tourism and things up here, the reality is most of the businesses are struggling and starting to fail because their prices were set prior to uh, any movement. And so while they may be busy, they're losing money being busy, which is probably worse than losing money and not being busy. Regardless, our expectation for treasuries was to continue the yield rising, and that meant TLT needed to drop, and sure enough, new lows. So easy call. It's just like them throwing money at you. I don't even know what people were thinking that, well, they were ignoring the Fed. This is a beautiful one to show the crypto winner all the way for Bitcoin from that. And it's not even the loft. I mean, that's only at 45. So, but it's a turnaround. The crypto winter is over for right now. At 52, it didn't happen that often, and probably not going to produce enough momentum at this stage. They're just over the 50%. We'll see when the magenta starts coming down here whether or not it's able to hold the 50, because that will be key to whether we get the next leg up, and that's where we would expect one of those drawn out. The magenta comes up, comes across, stays above yellow, yellow stays above as well. So that's what we'll be looking for. ETH again, that shows that lovely one. And ETH had a much stronger push. That was very nice going up there for a while. We've already peaked out again here, but then at a lower low, that would be problematic. But look at how ugly that shakeout is. There's nothing consistent about that. There's no real emphasis or momentum really driving it. It's just been an accumulation and a lack of sellers at that particular stage. So that's sort of the difference given the momentum that we saw here from the 50K. Boom, boom, boom. Buys all around. From an intraday standpoint, it might sound like started off kind of boring. I was like, okay, we're jumping up here. This could be a dull day. But then we start getting some sell signals, a little breakdown. I'm like, well, okay, let's see what it carries. Nice move to the 50%. More than happy with that coming off of a big run. We had some positive extremes, but they were more in the middle of the road. Now, that to me is always an interesting one when you get your positive extremes coming in a little bit late from the start of a rally. That's usually when you go into your parabolic, and if you don't go parabolic, then you really got a good strong chance that those are going to retrace back at least to a rising 50%. It's one of those things where you can start to see the momentum expectation should drive things, and when it doesn't, you know that there's some built-in weakness, and it's usually a faux move. Anyway, it tried to pop back up. Same sell signal again with white MBI leading at that particular case, which was much stronger. When the white MBI was leading over here, it was leading, but it was well below the 25. And if you're looking for that MBI leading, you want to be over that 33 and ideally over the 40 to really give it that indication that you're going to get a retrace into it. And then it caught some momentum. In this particular case, had the white MBI, but no fade of magenta. And that's what we're kind of talking about from a daily that's going to need to happen after the spike needs to stay up. Then we started to catch a rising 0%, and never made it back down there. Got down to the 23. There's a lot of buying, so pretty much held it up. But right from that white MBI area, hasn't really gotten back to that. So that's an interesting one in my view, because then we ended up with a couple other spikes, and usually when we see those, we start to get a feedback towards the 0%. Now, that 0% is climbing. So that will be the question. But beautiful how we've been between a lot of these previous algo levels. And that's why I didn't even adjust for the other positive extreme, because it's just slightly bit higher than the previous one. And it's like, okay, well, these ranges already exist. There's no point in changing that one. But we're still higher and continuing to move that way. So that is the long and the short of it, and probably a lot more information than you wanted to hear. But at the end of the day, we're in touch with what's going on in the world and the perceptions, because the perception is more important than the actual realities, because that's what drives price for the future. As always, trade well. We'll talk to you later.